Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today, I have a Ryzen 2600 CPU that I got exactly 1 year ago. But how does it perform in 2020? And with the new Ryzen 3000 series CPUs on the market, should you upgrade? Before we have a look at it, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can make more videos. I've used the infamous AMD FX8350 8-core processor for more than 5 years, and I told myself back then that I would never buy AMD again. Seeing AMD come back to the market like this made me very happy, and I got a Ryzen 5 2600 for my desktop and a 2600X for my secondary build. Let's look at the specs of Ryzen 5 2600. It's a 6-core, 12-thread processor with a 3.4 GHz base clock, a 3.9 GHz maximum boost clock, and a total of 19 MB of cache. It comes with the RAID stealth cooler, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and it's rated as 65 watts DDP. While AMD doesn't specify if that boost clock is all-core or single-core, I was able to achieve a maximum of 3.7 GHz on all cores and around 3.9 for a single core. You might want to consider getting an aftermarket cooler as you actually drop below the base clock in longer CPU intensive tasks. The 2600 was mainly competing with the i5 9400 or the 9400F. Quick note, the difference between a 9400 and a 9400F is an integrated graphics unit. The 2600 and the 9400F were similar in price. 9400F has a lower base clock but a higher boost clock, has less cache, and only has 6 threads. The 2600, just like all Ryzen CPUs, comes unlocked, so it's overclockable. As a result, the Ryzen 5 2600 was very popular among PC builders, and even PC manufacturers started using Ryzen again. On the other hand, you'd need to get an i5 9600K from Intel to be able to overclock it. We'll also be benchmarking a 9600K in case you'd like to switch back to Intel. I have my desktop here with a Ryzen 5 2600, an ASRock X470 Master SLI-AC motherboard, 2 sticks of 16GB G-Skill DDR4 2400 MHz RAM, a GTX 1660 non-super from EVGA, and the infamous Intel 660p 1TB SSD. Let's say you built this PC a year ago and you have some extra money. Should you upgrade to Ryzen 5 3600? Both CPUs have 6 cores and 12 threads and are rated as 65 watts. Also, the 3600 is fabricated on a 7nm node, while the 2600 is on 12 nanometers. But how do they differ in performance? We'll start with synthetic benchmarks, then gaming. Let's start with Cinebench. You can see the results on the screen, and overall, the 3600 is 20 to 35% faster than the 2600. In my opinion, the 36% increase in Cinebench R20 multi-core is very impressive. On the other hand, the 9600K is better than both Ryzen's in single-core, but it falls behind in multi-core. Now that we're done with Cinebench, let's have a look at 3DMark. As you can see, our CPU-based test results increase around 15%, while the overall difference is 3% at best. Our i5 gets similar results to the 3600 in TimeSpy, and I wasn't able to get the results for Firestrike. Looking at PCMark 10, we see a 28% difference in digital content creation and productivity, and a 15% difference in essentials. The i5 is slightly behind the 3600. Looking at 7-zip benchmarks, we can see the difference we saw in Cinebench again. We see a difference of 22% in compressing, and a whopping 46% in decompressing. Here, the 9600K falls behind the 3600 and the 2600 mainly because of the lack of hyperthreading. Moving on, we converted a 200MB H.264 1080p video with DTS to X.264 MKV. The 2600 managed to get 35.6 FPS while the 3600 got 42.55, ultimately a difference of 20%. Moving on to gaming, I'd like to talk about something real quick. When people do a CPU performance comparison in gaming, they tend to pair it up with a 1080 Ti or a 2080 Ti, but I really don't think that's a real world scenario. If you have a 2600 or a 3600, you'll most probably get a 1660 or a 2060 from Nvidia, or an RX 5600 from AMD. Here, I have a GTX 1660, and we'll start with CSGO. In CSGO, we get around 20% increase in average FPS when we jump from 2600 to 3600, and the 9600K performs around 5% better than the 3600. 1 and 0.1% lows show a similar difference. We'll talk about CSGO in particular later. For the rest of our games, we don't see a significant difference in the average, 1% or 0.1% low values. In general, the 2600 performs slightly worse than the 3600 and the 9600K, which perform very similarly. Now, let's have a look at the performance differences in general. As you can see, while there is some difference, it won't be noticeable, especially in 1080p. Personally, I don't know why CSGO is so popular for comparison. It relies heavily on the CPU, but we came to a point where the FPS figures don't matter in this game. Here, we see a 20% increase in performance in CSGO, and that seems like a big deal. But averaging 316 FPS isn't any different than averaging 274. 1 and 0.1% lows might make a difference, and we still see a healthy increase there. Looking at the comparisons, we can tell that the 3600 and the 9600K perform somewhat better than the 2600. But should you upgrade the 3600 if you already have the 2600? Despite the performance increase, my answer is no. The thing is, while you're upgrading to a newer generation CPU, it's still in the same tier, and for most users, it's not worth paying $200. It's quite unlikely, but if you feel like you need to upgrade your 2600, I recommend you upgrade to a Zen 2 Ryzen 7. It'll most probably work with your current IM4 motherboard, and you'll get a better performance bump. Alternatively, you could upgrade to an i7-9700K or a similar CPU from Intel, but you will need a new motherboard. Anyways, we compared a Ryzen 5 2600, a Ryzen 5 3600, as well as the Intel i5 9600K in this video, and it's up for you to decide if upgrading from a 2600 is worth it. I'll soon make a video about the Ryzen 7 3800X as well as some other PC components. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video, checking out my other videos, and subscribing to my channel. Take care.